Well, welcome everyone to another week of the Farming Forward webinars, creating and monitoring functional landscapes, and just working through the Tas Innovation Hub and the Future Drought Fund. So I thought it was good that they'd announced some more money. Hopefully, we can continue on. I was just going to roll through some slides, and then I've got some material from Spy here that I was going to go through, and just a few other things that I'm doing. So just acknowledging the Gunai Kurnai people. We're sort of down in here, on this road down here between there and the lakes. So and sort of it's got so much life at times, it sort of drives you crazy. So yeah, it says Celia said that the RANT won the Australian Government Climate Innovation Award for Tasmania, which is really great news. So it's great to spend so much time and effort doing this sort of stuff, and it's starting to move into everyone's sort of discussion and things like that. And the only worry is that all the chemical companies, Bayer and Yarra and all those others, are calling what they do regenerative, which is a long way from increasing biodiversity through increasing landscape function and profit, and people nested within that increasing biodiversity. We had very robust discussions, if you could imagine that, on the Tuesday night Zooms, and I'm developing an audit idea. I've tried it before, but I think people might be ready for it. And the idea is that you could go through and say yes or no. Had you done this, had you not? And it'd give you some direction of probably where to focus and stuff. And it's sort of, I'm working with one of the other members, Caroline, on doing that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And we're comparing our practices to achieve this outcome. So, we know that's the outcome we're after. We know that the foundation of ecology and ecosystem function is landscape function, and then you build on top of that. I think, I don't know whether Ian can hear me, but I hope he can't. But I think he said diversity first, and diversity is an outcome from building landscape function. So there's a lot in the regen put it first, including my good friends like Gabe Brown and Colin Seiss, and I'm just not surfing that wave. And actually, when you look at what they do, they build their biodiversity on that foundation of getting landscape function. So diversity is a consequence or an outcome of building landscape function. I'm waiting for this one to drop again. It should come out sort of early next month, hopefully, and I'll put it up when it does. We've been through this, the low cost, low risk, resilient, and increasing biodiversity. So we know what we need agriculture to look like, and reducing and eliminating certain practices is essential if you're going to be low cost. Having long recoveries, reducing debt, doing all those things are important if you're going to be low risk and reducing rainfall risk. If you're going to be resilient, you've got to increase in efficiency, and that's deliberately a little bit backhanded so that people stop. I'm just trying to grab people because everyone goes, oh, we've got to increase production and efficiency to be profitable and resilient. And it's the opposite. We need slack in the system, even though I argue that increasing landscape function is very efficient use of nutrient cycles and water and sunlight capture and all that sort of stuff. You can't afford to eat every blade of grass. And there's a lot of advisors that have that. Mark Gardner and I used to call them the last leaf brigade. They weren't happy if they hadn't eaten the last leaf. But as soon as it goes dry or you have these little blips, it all falls apart. And landscape function we've done few times. It's got to be covered. It's got to have mature perennial grass bases covering most of each hectare, or sorry, not most. I say 20% of each hectare has got to be covered with the bases of perennial grasses. You can have a perennial grass diversity, and that will function incredibly well if it's highly palatable, highly successional grasses. But then once you've built that, then you can start adding on some of the other sort of tap-rooted and but the fibrous roots are the base of holding the land stable, infiltrating water, cycling nutrients. And a lot of grasslands, like in Mongolia and places that I've worked in, the prairies and all over Australia, you can have them very healthy just with that. We modify the soil surface through recovery, stock density, and plant utilisation. People are still not sure which one's which and stuff. Recovery is very, very important. People can do a growing season recovery and restore restore a lot of that perenniality and soil cover. But then once you've done that, you've got to have enough stock density and utilisation to keep the carbon cycling in the pastures. Otherwise, it can lock up. So you've got to make sure that you utilise well and that you use it, that stock density germinates the perennials, and there's a threshold over which you don't get that. Sorry, I still haven't put these in. I've been modifying these a little bit. Have you sort of done the safe to fail trials? Have you got enough labour? We were talking about that just before we started. Do you have a simple breeding enterprise? You cannot buy animals that like this sort of management, and you need more than 200 sub paddocks per mob. And we run about 2,000 sub paddocks for the main cow herd. So you've got to have different idea. You can't keep subdividing paddocks. You've got to go for flexible strips that you're then putting a cross wire up that strip. You might have them semi-permanent with single hot wire with cattle, or 2 or 3 wires with sheep, and then move them up that strip. If you keep subdividing paddocks, I argue that most people will be 1,000 years old before they've got enough paddocks. So you've got to flip that and start thinking differently. It's really important. You've got to have it that it can be easily or can be automated, and you usually need portable water. So some people are trying not to do those things. Cell centres doesn't work. The radial fencing doesn't work. You can't get enough paddocks. You end up with these funny, weird cell centres and stuff like that. And then you need, with your breeders, you need to pick the best and then do things like AI or find size that will thrive under this management. It's really hard to do. And I believe once people get started, this is all very doable to me and very readily available. It can cost money and it takes time. Not a lot of money because the fences are really cheap. But this one is the hardest one. Where do you get these animals from? And that's the hardest thing to do. So keep coming back to that. And everywhere that I work, there is no excuse for not having 100% ground cover, 20% perennial grass, basal area, and slight decomposition of the litter. There is no safe to fail trials that don't achieve that in the high rainfall zone after 1 or 2 years. So if you can do it in a trial area, you can do it in the paddock. Is it easy? No, I'm not saying that, but that is what we should be aiming at, and that's where we're heading, because it's only then that I believe you can call yourself regenerative. And that gets into so many arguments, they exhaust me. So rainfall sort of is still not great in Tassie. It's starting, there's been some rain, but like as Rob was talking about, it got a little and then it disappeared again. So back to dry and having to feed out and do that sort of stuff. So so everyone's waiting for that rain. Hopefully it'll come. I looked at all the data in the 06-07 drought in southwest Victoria over here when I was working at DPI Hamilton, and every autumn break had come before the start of June. And so I was saying, oh, it should come soon. It should come soon. And then it didn't come till sort of the middle of June. So, and I go, oh, things have changed because there'd never been one in June before that you had. The key thing is though that one of the Caroline, who I said we have robust discussions, she's here. She's in this lowest on record severe deficiencies. Oh, sorry, severe deficiency area, and she had North American South ag students from South Dakota come to her farm. The normal farm that they go to didn't have any grass and all bare ground, so it's obviously not resilient and stable. But they came to her place and they said it was the best that they'd been to. So hopefully this continues to grow. And I keep saying to people now, I used to be a bit shy about this. If you like what we're doing, can you tell other people to join in? Get them onto here for the next 3 months. We need more, I was going to say bottoms on seats, but yeah, we need more numbers. We need to be able to show that this actually can be drought proof and can help people, because it's really clear and that if you manage like this, you skip over these periods and you make steady, stable profits. And when I'm thinking, if we grow our population, there's arguments that it's declining now, but if we did go to 9 billion, it's not having steady, stable food supply, which would tear us apart. So I think it's a non-problem because mammals don't breed when they don't get fed. But the problem is that we'll kill one another if we run out of feed. So, so we need to be thinking about sort of how do we get this steady state stable? We don't have boom bust years. This is where they were. So this is the view out of the kitchen window yesterday. And this is what Carolina, and she was saying, oh, well, what recovery was that? And I go, it's 7 months. It's all microlina and weeping grass. So it hasn't moved very much at all in 7 months. It's sort of, well and truly below the target. These bigger Hereford cows have been really hard to fill up. And I'd set the fence lifter to go off, but I'd set it for the hour before it was supposed to go off rather than the hour that it was supposed to go. So I ended up coming out to have a look. This is that big lake in the background when I was pointing about that, and then the ocean's just over these hills over here. So this is sort of all lakes and stuff, and we've got this water flowing down through here. So how long is this? I seem to be dawdling tonight. So that was very annoying. I'm using the fence lifter every second move. And it gives me sort of, 2-hour blocks to work, which sort of works pretty well for me. So they spend about an hour in each block, and then the fence lifter works for the next one. So the calves wander forward, and some of them seem to be immune to electric fence. So, and then this was the next shift after that. So I just cut it so you could see them shifting. So yeah, the fence comes up, it beeps. They're not great if they can't hear it. If the wind's really strong, and we do get good wind here, they miss it. So yeah, and then so everyone shifts through. There's a few still that don't like it. Some people are putting 2 of these lifters up, but I'm just saying, if you don't like it, you're going to have to go. This isn't sort of it's not they're there to work, and they're there to restore the land and to make money and to look after their calves. This one here jumped out of a fence down further. So, but I couldn't get her back until I shifted them back down from here. Yeah, so the same sort of problems as everyone else has. she knows she's in trouble and she won't go near me and stuff. So, and this one wanders around for too long. She wandered in and wandered out, started eating in and then got out and stuff. So, um, yeah, but we'll continue on because I've got a fair bit to go. Was there any questions?
Can
Oh,
I
how
ask
was
one
that? Was
question?
that?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure,
so
Lou.
you're moving them every hour. Um,
Yeah,
is that like basically daylight hours, and then you're keeping them in one smaller area
one
overnight,
area.
or
Yeah.
what are you doing for the evening?
I'll put them into a night paddock, which is bigger. I want them not to be too low in gut fill in the morning because then you've got to work too hard to fill them up. So you want them to have, yeah, probably 3 or 4 hours grazing overnight. When it's really hot, they graze more at night. When it's cold, they graze less. But yeah, so we're trying to graze them at over that threshold that germinates perennial grass, and then and maintain gut fill and dung scores. And then overnight, those night paddocks, as I call them, um, they they they're not at the same density, but they're in there for a long time. It's not as good, but um, yeah, I don't worry about them overnight. So they went to bed at
The, the
just
night
after
paddocks you're kind of
about.
sorry, the night paddocks you're using for multiple nights, and you've got a bunch of them, so they're not you're
Oh
still
no, no,
rotating between the night
no.
paddocks, or do you just have one?
Yeah, so instead of giving them whatever that is, 20, 25 steps, I'll give them 70, 80, whatever I make an estimation of the grass. So I just give them a bigger section of the strip they're in.
Gotcha. And then move them again the next morning into a smaller strip again.
Yeah. And then my friend Peter Reynolds that developed a Batlatch version of this, he'd set that up so that the first two moves until the frost had come off, like up at uh, those southern slopes in southern New South Wales. So he'd set it for sunrise and then another one an hour or 2 hours later, depending on what he was up to. So it really is if, and I keep saying this, and people think I'm trying to get money or something, is if you were really wanting to do this, I'd come and do it for 3 or 4 days here. And then you'd never look at it the same way again because you'd have actually done it, and yeah, because after the first couple of days of sorting out the mechanics of it, you then start looking at gut fills, dung scores. You're not just shifting them and winding up tapes. It's like as if there's sort of a stage where you've got to get the mechanics and then you go as they walk past you. So I always try to wind them in this direction on the strip so I can see that left-hand side to check their gut fill. So checking everyone. I was rushing when I did that one, as you could see, and it's quite steep there. It doesn't come out as well in the thing. So yeah, but it's that sort of experience somehow we need to get into people. This this management, I have a real problem with the way we train people and things like that. That it's the 3 day course idea versus the 3 year sort of what am I trying to think of, the apprenticeship sort of more idea. I think we need to be able to set people up because I know I used to get people to come while I was on holidays at Port Fairy. We'd be camping down there for 3 or 4 weeks, and I'd get them to be there by themselves. And they said that it was the best thing they'd ever done because all of a sudden you've got to be in charge, you've got to decide. So I'd give them a couple of days training and showing and things like that, and then I'd disappear. But I was always only 40 minutes away. So it worked pretty well. And usually they enjoyed it, sort of. And then as it got harder and drier, as you were going through January, they'd find that they had to work harder and shorten the shifts when it's dry. Move them more frequently. You actually start trying to chase gut fill, all those things in when it's dry, which are very easy when it's thing. Anything on the financials? This is I've put the logo in on this version. This is Mark Gardner's from Vanguard in Dubbo. I'd be having a bit of a scribble at it because the number is usually a bit horrifying for people. And just having a think, what would be your, like this isn't detailed enough, but it's enough to sort of see how big the problem is. So I'd do that. People are reluctant to do it because they're worried the number will be too big, but at least you know where you're up to and all that sort of stuff. I find that these two top ones here are the biggest log jams when people start. The bookkeeping, having enough time and energy. One of the things that when I worked in London for ICI Chemicals as an industrial chemist, what I found was that we were given the data already processed. We had teams of people. So on a weekly basis, I got all the countries I was responsible for, and you had the variation to budget. And you'd get them at the meeting, you'd run your eye down and go, oh, what am I going to say here? Because you could see the problems jump out. You weren't crunching the numbers yourself. So if you are going to crunch them yourself, I would make sure you did that one day and then had the meeting the next day. And having enough time to plan a profit is really those big things that you need to be thinking about. And I think when you're thinking about new sources of income, you've got to be able to design and implement a trial. The rest of it's pretty conventional, but in the complex domain or the complex area or the complex space, I hate space, but in the complex space, we've got to design and implement safe to fail trials. It's the only way that you'll know whether it works or not. Other people like that have started their own direct to consumer meat business, I say go and find someone and talk to them that's already doing it. Find out what worked, what didn't. Would they tell their best friend to do that? So ask them a question like that. That's from Dave Snowden. It actually gets a better answer if you say, if your best friend said they wanted to do this, what would you tell them? And there's a few things that this is just, like a little tightening of the belt exercise. Make sure you pay yourself first. And I think when I'm talking to people, land health is the leftover. So profit can't be the leftover. Typically, like I was taught, like everyone else, income minus expenses equals profit. So Alan's flipped that so that people take their profit first and then tighten in on their expenses. It's really a clever trick that changes our brains. And I think when I think about this, I think that we have if we have the farm, it's like as if the land is the last thing. We worry about money, we worry about this, and we forget about the land. And if you put the land up higher, then what I've found is that you get that more resilient. And you need some way of crunching numbers. Crunching numbers isn't an issue for most people anymore. It was a big issue when I started. Farmers that we surveyed a lot of farmers in New South Wales, and we found that less than 5% of farmers' preferred learning style was with numbers. Most of them were in that, what do they call it? They had a weird name for it, like existential or something, but they wanted case studies and stories, the majority. And then there was a few high literates in the middle. So very low numbers, few high literates, poet farmer, I called them in my head. And then most of them were these ones that wanted the story and the photos and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you need to be able to do that. If you can't do that, have a go for a couple of months. If you can't do it, just pay someone to do it. Get the accountant to do it for you. Yeah, they usually have got the numbers anyway. I'm going pretty quick, so jump in if you want. I've probably put too much stuff in before the other things. Just quickly, I'm going to run through this. This is work done by David Johnson at Californian, whatever it is, Californian Institute of Thingo University. And this is the diversity of the species in static aerated compost. So what happens? So after 4 weeks, you've got that many species. After 22 weeks, you've got that many species. And after 60 weeks, you've got that many species. So I don't think we need to go through them all, but the point I'm trying to make is those longer recoveries allow us to build diversity in the life that's breaking down the litter. And it's really important that it increases over time, because some of the advice doesn't allow for this. So if you're doing 1 month's recovery, sort of you're back here, it's just like it's a big, crunchy sort of thing. The life just keeps getting bigger and more diverse as you allow that recovery and that longer lived compost or decomposing litter on the soil surface. It's pretty clear they're analogous to one another. So is that all right? Will I do the colours again for everyone? Looks like it's got you in, Celia. That's why I was doing it. Does that work for you? That as it ages, it gets more complex and more diverse. So complexity is not about repeated belting the litter. Complexity and diversity in the soil and in the litter and everything is about allowing it to recover fully and then coming back and cycling it again. Is that clear enough? Did I say that all right? I might just leave this, Rob, if that's all right with you. Just Rob sent an email with a photo of he's ready to go in the safe to fail trial when the cows come through on the next one. And I'd imagine it's a bit like here, the grass is growing slowly. Just because we're just sort of starting to get down to low moisture in the soil. I won't go through this. This is from Bayer. All the fertilizer companies and stuff are trying to get into biologicals and things like that. So I first heard them talk at a conference up in Cairns that I spoke at with Gabe Brown and the couple from WA that my brain won't find at the moment, the Haggertys, Ian and Di Haggerty, and they were looking at a fungi then, but they've come up with some sort of beneficial bacteria as the product that they're going to sell. But if they were concerned about giving back to the land, I do not know how they can put that photo up. It just doesn't make sense to me. The guys that are good at regenerating land while cropping all have a solid layer of decomposing litter like we do in our veggie gardens. So, and it's decomposing at the soil surface. And then I'll just put this in, but this is the bacteria I was talking about. This is why I was rushing to get to. Before I start on this, any questions? I've gone very quickly, even by my standards. So, everyone happy?
Except when you pick on me.
Oh well, I thought you weren't. I thought you weren't concentrating. So
I was looking at it on the big screen.
I thought you were off working, doing something else.
No.
Now that you're famous, now that you're famous. So, did you want to talk to this, Spikey, or how do we do it?
Oh, well, yeah. I originally started this as just a bit of an overview in terms of showing what the farm plan was and how we graze and everything, and then we had a visit earlier this week from a friend of ours, Porky, who actually sold us most of our paddocks back in 2013, and we've stayed in touch, and we've bought 2 heifers from him, and he goes to the golf course, which is just across the road, and stops by on a semi-regular basis. Usually when we've put in some new fencing or yards or something, he's noticed it from across the golf course and comes down to visit. And yeah, so he gave us a bit of a warning on one of our cows that's going to calf soon. So this is both an overview and we're not really sure how to manage this. So if we could, yeah, we've got 73 acres all up. And the section without the lines on it doesn't have great fencing, and we have feral goats that help themselves in summer. So it's had, particularly the bit that's got trees on it, has quite long rest, many years of rest from cattle, but not from wallabies and goats. The section near where the house is there's a sort of a square paddock there. That was purchased later, and that's really gone to the woody weeds quite badly. So it's that front section with the different zones on it.
Yes.
That we're working with at the moment while we sort of wrap our head around it. We've got the 3-strand wire temporary or semi-permanent fencing that Celia showed us how to do along. If you want to zoom, go to the next slide, Graham, you'll probably see it more clearly. So where you can see the water as the purpley pink line, we've got these backbones. So we've got one where number 1 is, that's a very safe paddock because it's basically got wire fencing for every edge, and that's where we started. And then we've got one backbone down the middle that sort of allows us to get good electric and water for sections 2, 3, and 4. And then we've got a couple of zones on the left there that we're not strip grazing, so that the Happy Neighbour paddock, we allow our neighbours to keep their horses on there because they don't have quite enough space, and they're good to us. And the Heartstarter paddock, which is just across from that, is really, really steep. We tend to put the horses in there, and it's west facing, so it doesn't have sort of great feed. So in spring, when the horses need to be going up and down a hill, we tend to set stock there, but I would like to strip there eventually. So with the cows, we started in November in 1. We've gone through to paddock 2, and we're just moving them out from that 3rd section. And we're planning to bring them up into 4. Hopefully we won't get to the top too soon. Hopefully it won't be until November until we get to 1 again. So that's kind of the plan.
Like that sort of movement a bit.
Yeah. And so we're stripping them between 8 to 16 meter wide strips at the moment, and just how right now it's 1 move a day. We do up to 3 moves depending on feed and sunlight. Lawrence works full time. I have 2 jobs and I'm doing a PhD. We have a toddler. So the time, hands, resources is the tricky one for us. So yeah, that's the overall setup. And
how often would you shift? Once a day?
At the moment, it's once a day. We try and do it 2 times a day.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we just don't have the sunlight hours. We just,
Sure.
with work.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are you doing between the hours of midnight and 4? So, I would have thought that once a day would be a good plan. I don't see many people be able to move things forward very quickly for more than once a day. But if your workload is clashing with that, you do have to
You need to be quiet.
you do have to sort of head towards that sort of, but once a day's pretty good target. Sort of more than that is starting to it'll improve more quicker that way. So
Our default is 2, but we've just found that once we hit sort of May without the sunlight, it's just been impossible.
Yeah, the days are getting too short. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so too many wallabies, 3 horses.
Yeah.
And that's one, that video of the cows, that's them walking down the laneway. So we're trying to get them through the yards a bit more, and the yards are right up near the house. So it's quite a trek for them. Not sure if the video is
Oh, it's got a video on this, has it?
supposed to be, yeah. But maybe,
Oh,
yeah.
there it is. Yeah, no, there it is. I just
So it's that cow in the middle with the really pointy hips that we've received a warning about.
yeah. So yeah, that body condition score, she's probably a 2. So she's sort of, at the start of winter. I agreed with him, sort of that. Unless you get sort of a really green flush come through underneath, she's going to struggle. So is she due to calves, mate?
Supposedly, we purchased 3 in calf. 2 of them had the little bulls on them.
Yeah.
And so in theory, we've got 3 due to calf in June. It was November that they put the bull in. Is June right, or is it closer to July?
July. Yeah.
July,
August, which probably suit this year anyway. So,
so
it's 9 months. Yeah, so Augusty sort of time or something.
So the comments from the people who sold her to us were that she sort of always looks skinny, and that they didn't think that she was going to calf last year, but then she went and calved on them. And certainly when I go and have a look at the sort of the pictures she's no disputing she's not in great condition, but she was also not in as good condition as the other when she arrived.
Yeah, so she was below a 3 score. So yeah, those are the sort of cows that you just got to move on as quick as you can, because they end up being so stressful that they become like the tail wagging the dog all the time. So the key to doing this and sorting out the animals is to move on the problems. So
and I think
either
she's going.
Yeah, sure.
She's definitely going. But we want to wait until she calves, basically. We want to get her through to that. Yeah. This slide has sort of the next stage of what we were planning on doing already, which was creating what we call a bull paddock that has exclusion fencing all the way around. So a really secure one that we could strip all the animals in, including the bull when we have a bull on the property, but we don't have to stress about it getting out and being hard to catch.
Visiting the neighbours.
Well, I think the neighbours will probably come, there's potential to visit us, but it's just because we've got so many, we don't have any internal fencing basically. So if a bull escapes, getting it back is potentially challenging. And we're new to this, so we don't want to face that challenge for a little
while. Perfect.
Very good. And yeah, the red spots are where we've worked out that we'd like to do the safe to fail trials. They're just sort of typical plots for that paddock, 2 different areas, because where we're managing now is already pasture, whereas in that house yard it's quite a different environment. There's a lot more woody weeds, so it's 2 sets of monitoring to see how it responds.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And
Very
so
good.
we have these 2 problems with us right now. Grey cow, have to get more weight on.
Yeah.
And how to deal with these 2 little stags. They've both got 1 nut each. The local abattoirs closed. The 2 mobile butchers, one has got his books closed until next year, and the other one is now talking to me, which is great, but doesn't have a date for me. The old fellow who came to talk to us said, "Oh, just sell them. You know, you'll get nothing for them, but you know, pocket the money, buy yourself some nice meat." But we've been on a food budget of like $40 a week for many months, and for us, having that much meat for our family we're willing to kind of put a lot of work in to be able to get 2 stags in the freezer rather than just sending them off to market.
Yeah.
So the original plan was to bisect that future bull paddock and put the boys in there. But we have an issue with no one having any feed around.
Yeah.
And I think I saw some loosened round bales for $250 up north somewhere. But we don't really know how much feed is in that paddock. And I guess if we're wanting to get the butcher onto them, we don't want them losing weight.
Yeah.
And then with this grey cow coming in, you know, you've got to get more weight on her. We're thinking, well, maybe we need to put her in with one of the stags and just feed that set stock and supplemental feed them to get weight on. But that's, you know, a lot of stuffing around. So yeah, we've got the other side of the future bull paddock, which is risky because it's right next to the neighbours who overgraze. One of their cows has jumped a fence into our property because we've got feed and they don't. So we're a bit, and they're not breeding their cows. So I'm just like, if one of them's in season, it's already known to jump a fence, and we've got 2 little stags in there. So that feels quite risky.
Yeah.
But there is more feed in that section. So I think the next slide has a picture of that's got grey cow on it. So she's quite happily eating lucerne from a bucket. That's working okay. But we don't know how to fatten her. What's the best?
I'd pull the stags I'd pull the stags and stop them somewhere and just work out how to make the fences work.
Yeah.
As long as yours aren't getting into theirs, then it's less of an issue. Do you know, like you can't be responsible for theirs jumping into yours, but as long as you can make it secure. And from what I've seen with them shifting and that, you could make it secure quite easily with a couple of, you know, hot wires and stuff. So they don't have electric fences, the neighbour, I'm thinking.
They might. They're not. Yeah, they're elderly and in and out of hospitals, so they're not very capable, and they're actually physically not really capable of managing their animals. Last time when their cow got out, we herded it back in to their property for them. So yes, technically it's their problem, but ultimately it will be our problem if.
Can you introduce them to an agent to sell their cows?
They don't have a ramp, and yeah. They believe that they need to keep the grass down. So they need their cows to keep the grass down.
So you could help them with that.
So what I would do, Spikey, what I would do is I would set stock the stags and the cow.
Yeah.
And manage that from there. So because you really, feed won't be available and it'll be too expensive. It'll send you broke. So you're going to have to set stock them. So it's either set stock them on your land and make that secure, or sell them. I don't see much in between. You're short of time. So like hand feeding her, and
I
so
can.
you're going to sell her after she's calved, or
Yeah. After she's calved, we won't get her in again, and we might just eat her.
yeah.
Um,
And you really need to clean up the two stags as well, sort of as quick as you can, because otherwise you just sort of end up compounding all these things, and it becomes unmanageable and exhausting. So
with how, if I were to keep her in with the other cows, and because she, it's actually manageable to feed her with the herd. I've discovered they train very quickly with a bucket of lucerne, I've discovered. So I'm just dragging her up the laneway and putting the tape across and giving her a bucket. But my question is, I don't know what I need to give her to get her through.
Yeah. Oh, if she's getting some lucerne, and then with that dry feed, as long as there's some volume and you can get this gut fill up, she'll be all right through the winter. So like she could be on that in the background. Can you see where I am? Yeah. She could be on that with some lucerne and she'd go all right. That's Jim Elizondo does a lot of that. Yes, sort of just enough lucerne to keep the bugs going so that they can process dry feed. So you're just going back to those fundamentals of gut fill, dung scores, drinking scores, and doing that sort of stuff. But it's sort of you're going to be a bit pinched because she's sort of too hard of doing sort of for that sort of management. So I'd be just giving her enough to keep the bugs going so that she's got good dung scores, but supplementing, not feeding her the lucerne, if just enough to keep her dung scores good while she eats the dry grass. Is she very social? Does she stress when she's separate?
I don't know. We haven't had them separate really. She and Black Cow, who you can see in the background watching, are the two matriarchs. But yeah, that I don't know how she'd go separate. And
oh well, if you can do that and it's not too hard, then that works. That'll work. But yeah, she's going to be hard doing, especially if she calves. She doesn't look like she's in calf to me. But I suppose if she's not going to calve till August, that'd be all right.
So is there a percentage rule around like that sort of supplemental feed? I think if she was 500 kilos, she'd be eating, 2% of her body weight in dry matter a day? Is there any
3% closer?
3?
Yeah, 3%. So let's say that's 15 kilos. Is that right? 15 kilos of dry matter. I'm never great on maths when I'm doing this. I can't percent and do maths. Must be a different part of the brain or something. So you'd probably want 5% of dry matter of the lucerne, and that should keep her going, something like that. So 5% of 15 kilos on a dry matter basis. So
on each day.
Yeah. And you gotta think about, if you're supplementing, you're trying to feed the bugs in the rumen rather than to feed them with the lucerne. And if you give them too much, the bugs shift to lucerne bugs and then they can't eat the dry bugs. So it's a
Yeah.
bit, suck it and see. But somewhere like that, I'd be trying. And then if she's with the others and the others are going well, she'll go okay and stay okay. So
Yeah.
yeah. But we might shift on and if it's not clear. So yeah, she was a bit ribby when she got there.
Mm.
So yeah. Oh, but like this is the sort of thing, until you do it, you don't know. But next time they say she's always skinny, you go, no thanks, even if you give her to me. So it's all those sort of things. So yeah. But yeah, if they're going okay, I'd be trying to get her as much as possible to be supplement and eating dry feed. So
But to not try and do any minimize the calorie replacement, just keep it going with that as a room.
she'll each out. Yeah, if you shift the bugs to all loosen bugs in the guts, then she'll eat you out of house and home. Yeah, and you'll be struggling through that. So yeah, I think he's right, was what I thought. And it's just volume. She's not going to put on weight until she's got lots of green feed. So what I call milking grass, not sort of maintenance grass. Yeah, so and it's just sort of, I'd be reluctant to be heading down the grain. I'd stick with the lucerne if you can keep it. It's sort of safer. You've got to get them used to grain and things like that. So I'd be trying to just do a supplement with lucerne. So
It sounds like she's not kind of dire enough to go down that path yet.
yeah, and you'd have to then start training her. Like sort of weaning her over, not training her, weaning her over onto that. So
I think I know the answer to this question, but I thought I'd include this just so that you can see what we were contemplating. So the Dungeness side next to the cow, that's what the forage is like at the moment. It's about 1 acre.
sure.
And the previous slide was like it's mostly moss on that previous slide. I don't think it'd for a day.
It does have some grass, so they'd get a bit out of it. So the typical mechanism to create those conditions is it's being grazed and the soil exposed, then the moss grows on the bare soil, and then it sits there until you replace it with grass by grazing it high enough density to germinate more grass. But the grass is starting to come back through it. So. Yeah, and she'd do all right on that if she's got sort of that something to supplement her rumen and things like that. So very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope that was all right. But yeah, we can talk. What's that?
There's an overview of the troubles that newbies have. Like, I think when it comes to regenerative grazing, there's a different set of problems for sort of tree changers, city people and people who have been farming for a long time and looking at switching. So
I think so. And it's that sort of, it's that I was trying to say, it's the mechanics of it, sort of. As well as then you're starting to try and look at that ecological function and how that all works as well. Very good. How was that? Was that all right, everyone?
Can I ask if anyone else has anything that they want to share or say to us, given what we've showed you? Like, did anyone else have any comments?
Just that Graham's comment about creating corridors, because then they're easy to strip gaze. When you're looking at property layout.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy. It's the only way to do it, I think, having those sacrificial laneways and just moving the tape. Yeah.
Well, no, not just the sacrificial laneways, but your paddock design. Your paddock's basically just long, whether it's, 100-metre wide strips or 50-metre wide strips. And that's semi-permanent electric. And then you've just got your little dividers that you move.
Mm.
It can be fun depending on your topography, I guess, too.
Yeah, sort of too much tapes can get exhausting, I find. So
It's
very
certainly
good.
because we're currently doing 2 strands of tape because we're new and we're scared, and it makes from some scary tangle moments at times.
I'm just thinking, do you have yards or ramp or anything?
Yeah.
Because, you could sort of when you could do the deal with the next door neighbour and just put everybody together for a while until you've got boundary fencing sorted out. So rather than keeping her out, it's just their cow out. It's just like, well, how about we put them all together and we include your place for now until we get boundary fences done?
We'll probably suggest that if she jumps over, we might just keep her with the boys.
Yep,
Yeah.
and then use their area as well. Yeah.
Their area needs at least 30 years of rest. It's just-
You can do a lot with 12 months. All right, everyone. Thanks for that. Any other last comments, questions?
I was
Hope
just
that was
gonna say-
okay.
Just going to say thanks, Spikey. That was really good just to see like all the your plans and the photos, and yeah. So thanks for sharing that. That was really good and good discussion. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah. And if anyone's got any tips or ideas that I haven't covered, just bang them in and we'll get them to Spikey or however we do that. So that'd be great. All right, everyone.
Excuse me, Graham.
George, eh?
I was just wondering if you might want some pictures of my cows that I just got. If you might want to have a look at them or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
'Cause, like, I got
can
about
you
8 of them
email
down.
to me? Yeah, fantastic. Can you email them, Jet? And I'll put
Yeah,
them
I
up
can.
next week.
Yeah.
All righty. That'd be
Cool.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone.
All right. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Graham.
you.
Thanks,
Thanks
Mikey.
for that.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.